Hi, I'm Gouri and I'm a computer science undergraduate student at CU Boulder, and I'm here to talk about my stories and my experiences of going to India and some of my experiences of my parents when they immigrated here. So, I was born in the small state of Odisha in the northeast side of India, and I came to the US, to Pennsylvania, when I was 2 years old. My dad, he's the one that got a job at BMW and he moved here first. And then it was my mom and me. When he came to the US, he lived in a very small little crash pad. He didn't have very much like furniture or anything. He was eating like 3-minute ramen and like Maggi noodles that his mom packed for him, and like he had a really tough time. It was only when my mom and me came that he really was able to get through with everything. My mom had a tough time adjusting when she first came here is because while you're in India, while they teach you English in primary and secondary school, once you get into the workplace or if you get married, you're primarily speaking your state language or Hindi, the national language, at those locations. So when she came here, she was very shy and she was very dependent on my father, and she didn't have very much experience. She didn't know anyone here in the US. So my dad, when he used to come home from work every day, he'd sit down with her and help her learn English, like read and write. So when she's going to the grocery store or when she's calling, the leasing office or anything, she'd be able to communicate and they'd be able to understand her. And so once I was in school for a couple of years, they had my sister. My sister, she's 5 years younger than me, and she was born in Atlanta, and she's very American. Like, she's assimilated to American culture, and sometimes that can cause a lot of cultural rifts between my parents and me and my sibling. And some of this is caused by how different American culture is with Indian culture. In a lot of places, women aren't allowed to go out. I mean, you could take an Uber or Lyft now, but you'd still want your relatives. They'd be like, oh, you can't go by yourself, or you want to be really careful or not go at night. Versus here in the US, I mean, you're free to go wherever and when you please. And sometimes my parents and me and my sister would have fights with them about that. We'd be like, oh, I want to go see a movie with some of my friends from school, and they'd be like, oh, but it's already like 8 p.m., like when are you going to be home and who's going to drive you back and everything, and they'd be very concerned. And it makes sense because when they were kids they didn't have that kind of liberty to do that. And I think some of the other cultural differences include just when me and my sister we went to India, like we'd have to be very modest when wearing clothes and wearing makeup and making sure like I don't have crazy hair colors or anything when I went. And that was also a big deal because here in the summer you just want to wear shorts or like tank tops, or you want to just be free, versus there they'd be scared that someone might say stuff or they'd stare at you or they'd make comments or catcall you, which is a big deal. But another thing is that Indian families, they value education very much. Like me and my sister, my parents wanted the best education for us. When we went to India, some of our relatives, they'd be like, oh, let them stay here. Why do you have to go back to the US? It's on the other side of the world. But my parents were able to realize there's a lot of opportunities in the US that might not be available there. Because in a lot of India, there aren't, it's changing now, but there's still not very many women as CEOs or in high positions in society or making big, powerful points. So I think it's good that my parents brought us here. In India, when you have even 2-story houses, that's considered to be you're considered pretty wealthy. And my dad, he's always talking about how there's always bigger mansions and large estates here. Like he was very middle class, and my grandma, even she was like, no, you're very well off, dear. So one of the other big things is just My grandma and my aunts, they used to go on a lot of strolls or walks when they were in India, and they'd go out in the mornings and evenings when it's not like 90 or 100 degrees out. And when they came here, they were like, wow, you know, it's for the most part, it's pretty temperate. It's not too hot. Like, even in the summertime, it doesn't feel nearly as bad because it's dry. You don't feel sticky, or you don't feel like your clothes cling to you. And so they'd always like talk about how nice it would be to walk on strolls, and they'd say hello to people or good morning, or they'd pet people's dogs. And versus in India, you don't really talk to anyone while you're walking around. You're not like, oh, hello, how are you? There's no like small talk with like strangers. But they like that aspect of just how friendly everyone just on the streets or on the sidewalks would be. Hi, I'm Gouri. I'm from Boulder, Colorado, and thank you for listening to my stories.